In today's video, I'm going to cover the whole entire market in terms of Dow Jones, Nasdaq, and S&P 500, including the economic calendar. Now, I do post these videos daily, so I highly encourage you to double check the latest video on my channel, so that way you get the most up-to-date information. And before I get to the technical analysis portion, I'm going to go over the economic calendar. And for Tuesday, August 20th, 2024, at 1:35 p.m., we have Atlanta Fed President Raphael Bostic speech, as well as 2:45 p.m., we have Fed Vice Chair for Supervision Michael Barr speech. One thing to note, the following day, which is the Wednesday, we have minutes of Fed July FOMC meeting. So this will basically kind of give us a better signal in terms of September rate cuts, which the market is anticipating either 25 or 50 basis points. And if the market acts more favorably towards the 50 basis points in terms of their expectation goes up more towards the 50 basis points, then you could see a favorable outcome towards the movement of the market more to the upside. We are approaching all-time highs for the Dow Jones and S&P, and there's a good chance that we'll pretty much either meet them tomorrow or pass them within sometime this week regardless. And Nasdaq is slowly approaching to all-time highs as well, but it'll take a little bit more time. And then as well, one thing to note, Jerome Powell's not speaking for the Wednesday, but on the Friday, August 23rd, 2024, one thing to note, he is speaking towards the end of the week, and that's at 10 a.m. Fed Chair Jerome Powell's speech at Jackson Hole Retreat, just FYI. So keep that in mind within this week. One thing to note too, NVIDIA has earnings sometime next week, and the momentum for NVIDIA stock, given it is a mega cap stock, so it could pull up the market as well, is moving in a favorable outcome to the upside. Expectations to beat that earnings, by the way, they're expected to beat, and give some good upside guidance too as well in terms of forecast. Plus we have Tesla moving up to the upside as well. That is also a mega cap stock, and it's moving up pretty optimistically to the upside. So these are things that are carrying the market in my opinion for the most part. Plus the market is expecting a rate cut as well in September, so that is favorable for the market for movement to the upside. Now in terms of S&P, Nasdaq, and Dow Jones for tomorrow's trading day, which is a Tuesday, it is showing somewhat of 50-50 split. I think that's probably more anticipation for Wednesday in terms of the meeting minutes for the FOMC meeting minutes that comes out on the Wednesday. And I would say a little bit more of the Dow Jones showing a little bit potential of a slow rise up / maybe a drop. But essentially, in my opinion, they're just moving up anyway. Because again, market's expecting rate cuts. NVIDIA earnings expectations is supposed to be a beat, and it's just constantly, it's pretty much flying. I think in the past 2-3 weeks, it jumped at least 30%, at least somewhere from $90 or $80 or $100 all the way to pretty much almost to $130. This is after hours, by the way. So now in terms of breakdowns, I'm going to go through the S&P first and then go through the Nasdaq and Dow Jones, so on and so forth. I'm going to be looking at ETF SPY, which is the same thing as the S&P 500, just different ratio, and it's an ETF for the S&P 500, just FYI. Mind you, closed at $559.61, and essentially got to this zone right about here, which there was resistance and support, but pretty much exceeded pretty quickly. So again, 559 range, basically 560. And the next level essentially I'm looking to get to is for the most part moving to the all-time highs. So that is essentially in the ballpark of 563, 564 and some change. And then there is the pre-markets highs, which I think will be in play, which is about 565 and some change. Could we see that tomorrow? Potentially. I think there is a good chance personally that it's going to move up to that momentum still to the upside, because given NVIDIA stock is still moving up pretty rapidly to the upside. Plus we have Tesla. In my opinion, it looks like it's pretty much bouncing back up, potentially. But again, this is all just my opinion, so please do your own due diligence and research before buying and selling. Now, if we do come to the downside, I think we could see some decent support on this level, $556 and some change, and $555 and some change. That is based off the support levels right about here that we see, and right about here. In my opinion, that 556, maybe it could drop down to the 554. So 554 basically, which basically horizontally goes with support and resistance right about this zone. So 554 and some change. I think that would be the lowest, to be honest, in my opinion, for the Tuesday trading day, just because I think the market is regardless more expecting a dovish outcome, or more of dovish meeting minutes coming out from the FOMC on Wednesday in favor of a rate cut for September, in terms of a rate cut in September with 25-50 basis points. So I don't expect much downside for that meeting minute anticipation. And if anything, again, like I stated, if when those meeting minutes come out, then most likely the market will move up to the upside. So if it doesn't meet the all-time high on Tuesday trading day, it will, in my opinion, by the end of the trading day, Wednesday, it will get to the all-time high. And if it didn't get there on Tuesday, then Wednesday will. slash if it got there on Tuesday, then by Wednesday it'll pass the all-time high in my opinion, and then create new all-time highs. This is again for the S&P 500, more specifically looking at ETF SPY. But yeah, so there's that. Can it go higher? Can it go lower? Obviously, in terms of the lower specifically, because I didn't necessarily outline it, we could get into these moving averages. I'll just cover this quickly. So $545 and some change, but there is obviously lower levels. So before we even get there, there's the 550 and some change. Then there's the 548 and some change, and then 545 and some change, and then the 542 and some change, which coincidentally gets to this moving average. I don't even think we're going to get to this moving average, to be honest. There's no point to even covering it right now. I'll keep you guys posted day by day though. Now for Nasdaq, I'm going to be looking at ETF QQQ, which is an ETF for Nasdaq, just different ratio. Closed at $481.27, and we are approaching the not all-time high, upward trend resist line dating back since 2010. So this line represents an upward trend resist line since 2010. So just in case you're new to the channel, dating back since 2010, upward trend resist line. Mind you, the market was still going up. This doesn't mean the market's not going up. Still going up. It just had a hard time passing it. Every single time it went up to it, it got knocked down. It did break through in 2020 to 2022, then came back underneath it. And in March, give or take, of 2024, when it was underneath it and trying to pass it, got knocked down. And then it did pass and then went back underneath. So I'll show you visually. So here's the line right about here. It might be a little bit difficult to see what I'm talking about, but it broke through. I believe inflation data came out during that day. It spiked through, broke through, and then we got back underneath it. I know I have too many lines. I apologize for that. And then now we're going to be testing it again. So first thing is we have to pass pretty much about $482, $483, give or take, somewhere within that range. Because again, the longer we take to hit this line or pass it, the higher the high will be, if that makes sense. And then once we pass that level, you're looking at resistance potentially at about $484 and some change, but ultimately getting to this range about $487 and some change. In my opinion, that'll probably be the next level we'll be getting to. So 487 and some change, and then probably more so by Wednesday, probably close at the 490 and some change potentially. It depends on how the market takes the meeting minutes that come out on that day, because if it's extremely well, it'll pass the 490 no problem in my opinion. But the 487 is going to be the first level essentially, because I don't think the 482, 483 will actually cause some issues, because again, everything seems to be pointing up because of Nvidia, and the market already is expecting a rate cut regardless. So it's still getting baked into the market in a way, it looks like, potentially. Because they're all adding up as catalysts for the most part. Now to the downside, if we were to come down, we could potentially see support at the 475 and some change. That is based off of potential consolidation support right about here, resistance, sorry about that. And then that was resistance too. Then the support bounce off here, and one touch point support right there. So, and then collides with the moving average as well. So you're looking at $474 and some change, give or take, around that ballpark. And then the next level you could potentially have support at is the $468 and some change. I'm basing that off of the spike up of the earnings plus, inflation number bounce off, plus the consolidation resistance right there, and some touch points right about their resistance, but essentially coming down to the 465 and some change with the moving average, and then the 460 and some change, so on and so forth. I don't even think we're going to see these levels. More so, it's just, to be honest, I think we'll see support at the $474 and some change. If by Tuesday trading day the markets go down by the end of the trading day Tuesday for the meeting minutes on Wednesday, or maybe even leading up to Wednesday, I believe it's at 2 p.m. I think it was, just to double check. 2 p.m. on Wednesday. So maybe the markets will just keep going up. We'll hit that 487, and then by Wednesday we'll probably drop down to the 483 as support, which is the upward trend resistance line since 2010, which could act as support as well. And then probably after the 2 p.m. meeting minutes get released, we just spike up, have issues at the 487, and then get to the 490 and some change. If the data comes out in terms of what the Fed might do, is favorable for the market in terms of rate cuts based off potentially 50 basis points for September, so on and so forth. Otherwise, it'll start coming down to the levels lower and lower, so on and so forth. But again, I don't think we would get down too low. And one thing that would probably come down lower, so like I mentioned, 474 and some change, basically 468 and some change could act as support, and then utmost lowest, in my opinion, for the time being, because there's just too much catalyst to the upside, would be 465 and some change. I don't expect to go lower. The next level, I would say 461 and some change, 460. But again, this moving average is not even going to be in play, in my opinion. But for Dow Jones, a little bit different. It is showing upside. It will be testing the all-time high potentially Tuesday or Wednesday, potentially. The only problem is, based off MAC lines, the S&P and Nasdaq are showing more of like 50-50 split, but more of an upside. The Dow Jones is showing a 50-50 split as well, but a little bit of a slowdown drop downside. But I think you could neglect it though, because of the catalysts for the upside again for the S&P, not S&P, in terms of the market expecting a rate cut plus Nvidia stock and so on and so forth, and Tesla. But we'll see. So right now, mind you, we closed at 40,896 points. And then to the upside, first resistance level I would expect would be about 41,200 points, give or take. That's based off of this consolidation resistance plus the spike up resistance horizontally, if you can see. And then the all-time high would be, the next level would be 41,364 points, give or take, around that ballpark. But essentially, if I would expect anything, probably would close on the Tuesday in favorable outcome to the upside. After the speeches, if everything seems like it's fine, that what the Fed speeches, because we have two of them on the Tuesday, if they seem like rate cuts will be most likely the case in September from what they're stating or something like that, or they hint at something and nothing negative, then most likely we'll close at probably 41,200 points potentially. And then by the Wednesday, not necessarily the early part of the day, more after the meeting minutes come out, probably be testing again 41,376 points, give or take, whatever that high is, that spike up exactly from the all-time high, and then even pass it personally if the market takes it extremely favorable. Now, if we were to come down to the downside, we could potentially have support at the 40,548 points, give or take, like basically 40,550 points. That's based off of the potential support and resistance zone right about here. Not necessarily that strong, so I would most likely expect it come down to this upward trend resistance level that dates back since 2021 that could act as support, so touch points right across the line the whole entire time. And we'd be looking at potentially support at the 40,450 points, give or take. And then if we were to go lower, then I would assume that we'd probably get down to this moving average zone, which is anywhere between the ballpark of 40,130 points, give or take, but essentially 40,100 points by the time we get to it. And then 39,850 points, give or take, so on and so forth. But most likely 39,800 points also, because as we drop, the moving average will drop as well. But yeah, so that's basically it for today's video. If you found it beneficial, consider dropping a like. It does help the channel, so thank you so much for that. I do appreciate it. And I do post these videos daily, so I encourage you to follow/subscribe if you want to be notified when I do upload my next video. And that's basically it. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate it. Take care. God bless and peace.